In today's video, we're going to be talking about what could be considered the worst PlayStation 4 game ever, so much so that it's being removed from the PlayStation Store. We've got information on Resident Evil 2's story and how it's going to be changing some things up and making it fresh while still keeping the essence of the original intact. Santa Monica Studio, the guys that brought you arguably the best PlayStation 4 exclusive ever in God of War, are now hiring, and it might be suggesting a new God of War. Many of you may have been wondering whether or not the new Spider-Man game story is a completely new story, or if it's based on previous comics. Well, we've got information on that end. And The Division 2 is looking to be a pretty big game as the beta has broken registration records for Ubisoft. More on that at the end of this video. First, let's talk about what is considered by many to be one of, if not the worst PlayStation 4 game of all time, and that is the Culling 2, another battle royale game that has gotten an incredibly negative reception, so much so that the director of operations at Xavier, Josh Van Vliet, uploaded a video talking about how the game turned out and saying, quote, "Not a game that you asked for, and it's not the game you expect as a worthy successor to the Culling. The best course of action is to take the game down off of store shelves." He also mentioned that this week he's going to get in contact with Valve, Sony, and Microsoft to take the game down, and they are going back to the original Culling, the Culling Day 1, as he put it. Now, it's great of him to do this, but at the same time, I question how sincere this is, because looking at the Culling 2, how do you not know that this game is an absolute disaster? How do you have a team look at the Culling 2 as it is and be like, hey, let's release this product, we think it's really good and people are really gonna enjoy it? I personally saw it coming from a mile away that the Culling 2 was gonna be a game that people were not gonna take too kindly to, and that was the case. It's not like the developers are stupid, especially with the quality of game that the Culling 2 is, or lack thereof of quality. They knew what they were putting out, and to me this comes more so as damage control. Now, it is much better than keeping the game on the store and having people buy it, because at the end of the day, as a battle royale title, there are just gonna be people who see the game and be like, hey, it's battle royale, let's just buy it. And it's good that they're not taking cheap cash that way, but at the same time, this game should have never been released, and just them releasing such a bad product from the get-go, that really can't be remedied. But at the same time, a lot of gamers are actually fond of the original Culling, so them going back to the Culling Day 1, that is very positive news, so I'll give them credit where credit is due.
In some hints. It's bigger than before. And deadlier than ever. But most of all, it's Cullinglier. Did you sniff out all the clues?
Moving on from that, Resident Evil 2 is one of the most anticipated games of next year. It's not going to make it out 2018, but it is releasing very early on in 2019, actually releasing on January 25th. And you might be wondering the alterations that this remake is making from the original. Of course, it's being remade from a visual sense. And what about its storytelling elements? Well, Capcom brand manager Mike Lone spoke on that, and here's what he said. There will be places in the original game that you just drove by, or maybe just walked by, or people that you talked to maybe had a handful of sentences. You're really gonna have deeper experiences with those. They're more involved than they were in the previous game. The narrative is definitely enhanced, but I can't get into what those are, obviously. Now, based on that little quote, I think that is the best route to go with RE2. You're not changing what was already there, but you're actually adding more depth to the experience and fleshing out more of the characters and experiences. What's wrong with that? That definitely doesn't damage the integrity of Resident Evil 2, and I don't see why anyone would be disappointed by that. Just some side characters and some environments being fleshed out. That is absolutely great in my book, and I was already completely sold on the Resident Evil 2 remake, but that just sells me on the game even more. If you're not sold on the game, you probably haven't checked out the trailer, you probably haven't checked out the gameplay demo, or maybe you're just too scared to play the game. I don't know what the case is, but for the early part of 2019, this is looking to be one of the biggest games. Again, it is being released on January 25th. Moving on from that, we've got some news on some PlayStation exclusive IPs. First up, Sony Santa Monica Studio, the studio behind the great God of War, has a brand new job listing over on their website, and it is for a concept artist to design new gods. So as PlayStation Lifestyle put it, this could either mean two things. One, it could mean a pretty expansive piece of DLC to God of War, or more likely, it is a God of War sequel. We all know that a God of War sequel is happening. The first God of War sold incredibly well, and there's so much more that they can delve into with with Norse mythology. They've only really scratched the surface, and there's a lot more story to be told. I think it's a formality that there's a new God of War game in the works. I don't think it's gonna be released this generation. I believe it is going to be a PlayStation 5 title, but now that they do have the foundation of God of War built, hopefully it doesn't take as long as it took between God of War Ascension and this God of War title. I believe the release in between those games was 5 years. Let's hope to see another God of War title less than 5 years later. I'll be perfectly fine with 3 or so years. Next up, another PlayStation exclusive we've got to talk about is Spider-Man. The game's release is right around the corner, and this is of course a PS4 title. It'll be releasing on September 7th, and now we're getting more and more details about the game. And if you were wondering whether or not the story is a completely original story, creative director at Insomniac, Brian Intihar, has got you covered on that question. Someone tweeted at him, "What comics did you try to adapt to Spider-Man PS4 story?" And he just responded saying, quote, "It's an original story. Point blank, this is a completely original Spider-Man story for you to enjoy. There's no comic it's being based off of, and they're developing their own creation." Again, Spider-Man will be released on the PS4 September 7th. This looks to be a pretty big commercial blockbuster, as the collector's edition has already completely sold out, and if you see how the game is shaping up, it's hard not to be excited for it if you own a PS4.
Come on, Spider-Man. I thought this was a chase. Gotta stop this guy. If you tell me who you're working for, I'll go easy on you. Can't stop it. But I'm flattered that you still try. Nobody ever takes me up on that offer. Gotcha. Vulture, what?
Long time no see. We're going to have so much fun.
Sorry, no time to talk.
Okay, I got the security cameras back online.
How's it look?
Well, it looks like the entire population of the raft has escaped.
And lastly, one of Ubisoft's biggest projects that they're working on has to be The Division 2, and The Division 2's beta registration has broken records. According to Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot, The Division 2's beta is the fastest registered in company history. That is pretty incredible to me, because if you look at all of the multiplayer games that Ubisoft has put out, there have been a lot of pretty big ones, and anecdotally speaking, I didn't think the anticipation for The Division 2 was quite as big as the original, but it definitely seems like the anticipation is there, so good for them. What I've seen of The Division 2 has looked really good, but personally speaking, playing The Division when it originally released, I wasn't a big fan of it at the time, but the experience got better and better, so it's easy to see why gamers have given the game a second chance, and now they are excited for The Division 2, as it shows by the beta registration breaking records. We just talked about The Division 2 yesterday and why the game is moving over to Washington, D.C., so if you want to hear about that, check out yesterday's video, and you'll be able to check out the complete Division 2 experience on March 15, 2019.
Yes, absolutely. We were very excited to showcase that yesterday in our reveal, and to show more, of course, today. We had multiple options. We investigated multiple options, but for us, Washington, D.C. felt like the natural choice for two obvious reasons. One, of course, is the seat of power in U.S., and second, it's also the home of the headquarters of the Division.
Right, the HQ of the Division agents,
Absolutely.
right? That's awesome. And I can see there is no more snow nor ice. Can you tell us a little more about really the timeline from the Division to the Division 2?
Yes, absolutely. In Washington, D.C., we are now in the middle of the summer, 7 months after the events in New York City. So the summer, the season, allow us to showcase a vibrant city where nature is now taking over the city.
It's beautiful. Hey, Yannick, can you do just like a pan? Oh, I guess you're in action right now, but just like the pan of the city here. I mean, obviously, it's beautiful in its own way. It's got character. Yannick,
So that is going to conclude this video. The Culling 2 is arguably the PlayStation 4's worst game ever. At the very least, it's on the short list of very bad PS4 games. So much so that the game is being removed from the PlayStation Store. If that doesn't tell you everything, I don't know what will. The Resident Evil 2 narrative is being altered a little bit, but it looks like for all the right reasons. It's just going to be more fleshed out from the side characters to the environments. Michaelon wouldn't go in depth, but he gave us an idea of what we could expect. Santa Monica Studio is hiring for a concept artist, and that seems to be pointing to a God of War sequel, or maybe on the off chance it is an expansive piece of DLC, I would probably think it is a God of War sequel. Spider-Man PS4 story is a completely original story, not based on any previous comics, and the Division 2 beta registration is breaking records. Good for them on that. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.